But just to revise a little bit what we were talking about last time with our 31 different realms. We talked in Buddhist cosmology about 31 different realms of existence. All the way from Nirvana at the top, all the way down to the bedrock of hell at the bottom. If you want to summarize these realms into difference of quality, in that those in the sensual realms, that be the various unfortunate realms, the human realm and the heaven realms, their main thing which they survive off, which motivates them, is sensual pleasure. However, if you come up to the 16 form Brahma realms, the main thing which motivates or sustains the life of the beings there is the happiness which arises from the meditation in the form levels. Above that we have again a completely different plane, which is the formless plane, and this is where beings survive off the happiness or joy coming from high levels of awareness from the formless jhanas or meditations. Okay. So those are all spheres of existence. If you look on the other side of the pagoda, then you see the equivalents in terms of experiences which you can have a taste of what it's like to be in those realms without actually having to die to get there. So if you're very good in your meditation, you can use your meditation to explore these realms merely through your inner experience. And we see that the human realm has the human body as its equivalent. The heaven realms have the celestial body as its equivalent. The form Brahma realms have the form absorptions or the form Brahma body as their equivalent. And the formless realms have the formless Brahma body or the formless absorptions as their equivalent. Going further still, we can see that there are underpinning virtues which sustain each of these levels of mental state, which apart from meditation alone, you have to have a degree of purity of lifestyle to support that mental state, which for a human being would be 5 precepts. For beings in the heaven realms, it would be a sense of conscience, where you wouldn't want to do something you knew was bad, even if no one else saw you doing it. What we call fear and shame of evil behaviors. When we talk about, what we've talked about so far is where we go when we die. But something which we haven't addressed yet is where we come from before we're born. Often in the Western world, we think of a child as being like a clean slate, coming into the world without any background, as if they are innocent when they come into the world. Nothing a child could do, they could ever be blamed for. But in Buddhism, we have a different way of looking at it. We say the child of today is not the adult of tomorrow. The child of today is the adult of yesterday. So every child brings with it into the world a past. Okay? So what we're going to look at a little bit today is about how we got here and what we're supposed to be doing now that we are here. Okay? Buddhism, they talk about 4 different modes of birth. In fact, you find it in your morning chanting. With the word, when you spread loving kindness in your morning chanting to all the different beings, it also mentions the 4 different modes of birth of those beings. The first mode of coming into the world is the live birth or being born from a womb. So mammals, all forms of mammals are born from the womb. In Pali language they're called Jalapucha. And they are produced by sexual reproduction normally, human beings and mammals. Okay? Second form is those which are born from an egg, which are called Andacha in the Pali language. This can include things like chickens, of course, but it also includes reptiles and even some forms of insects, snakes. Again, they reproduce by sexual reproduction. The third category is beings which arise in moisture. Things like larvae which grow in stagnant water. In the Pali language they're called Sansetacha. I'm telling you this because the font in your handout is a little bit dodgy. And the reproduction is usually asexual. So one piece of amoeba gives rise to another one, okay? And last but not least, and this is something which science doesn't know about, but which the Lord Buddha talked about, is beings which arise spontaneously, what's known as oviparous. What do we mean by arising spontaneously? Well, they arise without needing parents to have some sort of reproduction to give rise to them. What sort of beings are we referring to here? Normally it's not the sort of beings we can see with the naked eye. But often it will be things like angels, where, as mentioned yesterday, once your spirit leaves your body, then it arises in a new realm, and it doesn't need a mummy angel and a daddy angel to make a baby angel. In heavens of Buddhism, we don't have cherubs, okay? And everyone is born immediately in human form of the age of about 16, and they stay that age until the end of their life by appearances. It's the same in hell. If you end up in hell, then you arise in human form. You don't get to be a baby hell being and you gradually grow up in the hell realms. It doesn't work like that. You arise spontaneously in adult form, and this is called spontaneous arising. You may not believe this immediately. Okay, it's normal, it's not something we can see with the naked eye. But I think if you meditate further and you start to appreciate how mental states can arise within you, even spontaneously in such a way, you see that the nature of the mind is to do this. The mind changes spontaneously. And when mind is your state of existence, then of course your state of existence can appear or disappear just as easily as you can change your mind. When a person arises in the human realm, it's said that this is in fact something which is very rare. You know how rare? You might think, well, there's plenty of people in the world. How many now? 6 billion? Must mean that to be a human being is very, very common. And if you compare the number of human beings with, for example, the number of termites or ants or leaf mold or whatever, you will see that in fact human beings are still in a very small proportion. The number of insects in an Amazon forest, we are like a drop in the ocean compared to these other forms of life, even the ones that we can see with the naked eye. And if you compare the number of beings, even the ones which you can see with your naked eye, to the other realms which we cannot see, then the proportion is even smaller. There are two metaphors which the Buddha used. Let's go for one metaphor first of all. There's a metaphor which the Buddha used for the rarity of taking human birth, and he talked about a blind turtle which once every 100 years would come up to breathe somewhere in the ocean. And in that huge ocean, there happens to be a garland floating, one single garland. The chances of the turtle coming up for air and accidentally popping its head through the middle of that garland in the whole wide ocean, that is the chances of being a human being. So the other realms, the other ones of the 31, they are seething with people by proportion, seething with beings. And to be born a human, and it's really quite a short period of time which we're born for as well, only 70 years. Yesterday we didn't talk about the lengths of time you spend in other realms, but in fact this time scale of days and nights in other realms is not equal to that in the human realm either. For example, 1 day and 1 night in the first level of heaven, Jatu Maharajika, is equal to 50 days and 50 nights in the human realm. So it's like the world spins a lot more slowly. In the second level of heaven, 1 day and 1 night is equal to 100 days and 100 nights in the human realm. And it goes like that in exponential. Once you get up to the very high levels, the lengths of days and nights is very long. Not only that, but the lifespans of the beings living in those realms is also much longer as well. So, supposing an angel in the first level of heaven gets to live for 500 heaven years. 500 heaven years is multiplied by 365 of those days, which are 50 days and 50 nights long. So, by the time you're adding up lifespans, it's now of the order of millions of human years. And there's a story in the scriptures about someone who had once been born as a princess in the human realm, and when they passed away, they arose in heaven. But even though they were in heaven, they were still very much in love with the prince or whatever in the human realm, which they left behind. So as they were in the heaven realm and picking flowers, suddenly by their will, they arose in the human realm again and lived out a full length of life in the human realm, and then went back. They did good deeds again, of course. They ended up back in the same level of heaven that they were in before. And the friend said, "Oh, where have you been? Didn't see you for a few minutes." Well, for that few minutes in the heaven, they had been lived out a whole life in the human realm. And sometimes we like to say that our human lifespan here on earth, we disappear only for 6 hours from the fourth level of heaven. So this 6 hours worth, see how much merit you can get during the 6 hours worth.